Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, follow us, review us. Remember those reviews. We still need plenty of those reviews. That really does help. Join our Patreon. That certainly helps. We have links in the show notes to make all this stuff really easy to find. It really all does help so we can continue having great conversations like the one we're having today with Wajahat Ali. Wajahat Ali is a writer and, as he describes it, a tired dad and minivan driver. Waj is also the editor of the Left Hook Substack. He is the co-host of the Democracy-ish podcast. He is the author of a memoir and a play and owns a mansion and a yacht.
Yes.
Actually, yeah. Kidding about
Both.
the last two.
And which is a Honda Odyssey minivan and a Lego Millennium Falcon. But that's my delusion.
That's awesome. Most importantly, he's a multiple time visitor on this very podcast. Thank you so much for joining, Waj. How's your 2025 off to so far?
I mean, 2025, the chaos continues, but Happy New Year. And I think this might be my third time appearing. So if you ever watch SNL, they have a 5-timers club. When I reach my 5-timer club, I expect a mug or a shirt. And you could put your face on it, on the shirt, just to like. And I could just say, you know what we could do to make it super awkward, but also lead to good stories? We could have your happy, smiling face on the shirt, and then just say 5-timer club and nothing else. I'll just wear
it. So Mike Madrid and Jonathan Rausch are IMing me right now. They're like, "Where's my 5-timer club?"
Yeah, man. If they're listening to this right now, they're like, "Hey, I'm unfortunately a 3-timer, but I'll get there. You'll
get there. You will definitely get there if you'll have me." So to speak.
No, look, 2025, look, and let me put it this way. You could sit there and lament, and we all can, but at the same time, I'm sitting here in Snowden, Virginia. It isn't too bad. It's super cold, but you also have to be grateful, right? You're in Southern California. I'm watching my home state of California burning, devastating winds. Every single day, I get an email and images of homes that are destroyed, of 1 degree of separation, friends, people that we know, right? People are homeless. 5 people have died. And it's painful to see, right? Because, in 2025, unfortunately, what's going to happen in America, Corey, is with this incoming administration, even decency and compassion are apparently acts of transaction, right? You and I know that it costs nothing to be decent. It costs nothing to be empathetic. It costs nothing to be performatively compassionate, right? You could say, "Oh man, hope you're doing well." And what we're seeing in California, my home state, the fifth largest economy in the world, most populous state in the country, 40 million people, Donald Trump mocking it, ridiculing it, right? Calling governor new scum. And you're seeing conservatives and Republicans, a talking point that started 2 days ago. I warned about it, now it's gone mainstream, blaming DEI and people of color for this tragedy as people's homes are burning and people are fleeing. And instead, President Biden, I criticize him when it's necessary. I praise him when it's necessary. It's just being decent. He goes, "What do you need? I'll help you out." And so what we're witnessing now is a foreshadowing of America under Donald Trump and under Republican rule, just cruelty, right? And like, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I understand politics, but just for a second, can't you be decent?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. The answer is no. He cannot be decent.
Well, here's the thing. We started talking right before I hit record. He used to be a friend, and literally as recently as 6 months ago, we were at a high school reunion, and we shared a drink, and it seemed like we could connect. We knew we had differences. But he's posted nonstop. Like the fires are literally still burning. My pastor at my church has lost his home. Another friend, their family with 3 little kids, lost everything. And this dude's posting about California incompetence, new scum. He's something about Ukraine. I can't. And one post after another. I said, "Sean, just give it a beat, man. Can you wait till the fires are out before you're like?" It feels like you're pouring gasoline on these
Mm.
fires, these literal fires, dude. Just take a freaking beat. Like, help me understand, Waj. I don't understand how people that I thought were basically decent people. We had our differences, but basically different, but are now blinded to a basic sense of decency. I don't understand, man. I don't understand.
People might not like hearing this, but about a third of Americans have been radicalized, and I believe perhaps for our lifetimes, Corey. They, this, they're not evil. They don't have horns on their head. They don't spit fire. They don't have forked tongues. They're just people. But as you know, they listen to Fox. As you know, they watch these YouTubes and these podcasts, Ben Shapiro's and Tucker Carlson's, right? And the talking points that they get create a type of inverted reality, the upside down, Earth 3. Like you mentioned, new scum. And you could pick it up by just hearing the words that get repeated. New scum, DEI, right? Haitian immigrants, stealing pets, caravan. And so we have about a third of our fellow Americans who are now radicalized by let's be honest, it's a majority right-wing media that dominates podcasts, that dominates YouTube, Fox News, the number one cable news channel, right? We see corporate media bending the knee, and you're seeing these talking points infiltrate mainstream media. Scott Jennings yesterday on CNN, guess what he said? Blame DEI.
I
2 days
so
ago,
I don't understand. Have you, even though you
I've
don't
been
agree
tracking
with it,
it.
obviously, like I don't get the logical connection that they're trying to make.
This is the logical connection. 2 days ago, Donald Trump Jr. responded to his dad's post and blamed DEI, right? As soon as he said it, then you had James Woods, the actor, whose house was literally burning down, but he couldn't even, it's like, bro, you've lost everything. Guess what? You're about, like, take a beat. Couldn't take a beat. Guess what you want? He went on Twitter, blame DEI, as his house is burning down, right? Then last night, Scott Jennings blamed DEI. Now today you have the comedian Adam Carolla blaming DEI. What DEI is instead of blaming climate change, which Republicans don't believe in, and let me just sit here for a second, just to show you how extreme the movement has become, Corey. Like you said, I can't recognize my friends. There are right-wing movements all across Europe. These right-wing movements are xenophobic, they're misogynist, they're anti-LGBTQ, they believe in white supremacist conspiracy theories. But these right-wing movements, you know what they believe in, Corey? Climate change. The only right-wing movement in the world right now that denies climate change is MAGA and Donald Trump. So instead of literally acknowledging climate change, what they're now blaming is DEI. So in addition to advancing politics, they also advance racist cultural divisions. DEI is code word for black people, brown people. Look, it's the black and brown people that you've put in power. It's because of them and their incompetence, which is why this is happening. If you had white people in power, this would never happen. They blame the Boeing crisis not on deregulation, on, wait for it, DI hires. They blame the bridge falling down in Maryland, not in bad infrastructure, but on DI. Just last week, Steve Scalise blamed the terror attack in New Orleans not on domestic terrorism and radicalization. Guess what they blamed it on?
DEI.
DEI.
Oh boy. I feel like we need to take a minute and do a little bit of meditation right now. We need to like take a like
This is
so
where we are, man. It's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse in the next 4 years.
when I first reached out to you, I thought that I wanted to have more of a 30,000 foot conversation because it's like I mean, I thought of a fire hose, like drinking from a fire hose. But I don't want to drink from fire hoses. I don't want to divert any fire hoses that need to be used on the fires right now. But there's so much is happening on a day-to-day basis. So part of what I wanted to ask you about is you had this great talk a couple of years ago about having a sense of hope in the most impossible circumstances, like
Mm.
when Nuseba was going through her treatments and there was no sense of hope, how you were holding on to a sense of hope. And every day, right now in Southern California, there's devastation all around us, literally all around us,
Yeah.
and only being exacerbated by the rhetoric, by Donald Trump doing what we all know he's always going to do, which is put himself as the center of attention and create nothing but division, even in these circumstances. So we know that. So how do we deal with it? And how do we, what kind of hope is there in a moment like this?
Yeah, so yeah, for those who don't know, it's about 5.5 years ago, my daughter, who was about to turn 3, Now she's 8, was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, liver cancer, hepatoblastoma, out of nowhere. And she needed a full liver transplant. And you can imagine just the journey to find that liver transplant, the chemo to keep her alive. You never knew, right? It was just like, where are we going to find the perfect liver? The Wagyu liver, right? The A5 Wagyu liver. Literally, who's gonna, I didn't match the blood type, even though I was the father. My wife didn't, so we felt so useless. Then you have to, anyone who's gone through this, and hopefully no one does, you realize even in this country, the wealthiest country on earth, even with insurance, you still need money, right? So we're like, oh my God, finances, money, healthcare. My wife was pregnant at the time. We have a son. At the time, he was 5. And so if you don't have hope in those moments, what you have instead is despair and apathy and cynicism, right? And there's an Arabic word called waswasa, it means the whispers. And the whispers come, right? Some people could call it the devil, Satan, whispers, doubt, right? And they creep up, Corey, especially when we're at our most weak and most vulnerable, right? And you can't imagine a good story. You just can't. And you're like, it's all over, it's bad. And what hope is hope is not optimism, right? Hope is believing in a better story, but doing your part to get there.
Tying your camel first.
Yes, it's optimism with action. That is hope, right? And you said tying your camel first. It's I wrote about this in my book. There's a great saying in Islam: have faith in God and tie your camel. Right, which means that, okay, suppose you're in the desert and you have a camel there and you're like, hey, inshallah, God willing, the camel will stay. Maybe, but you do your part and you tie your camel to the post and then you leave it to God, right? And that's all that we can do. And so in those moments, and in my life, what I have decided to do to not fall into despair, to not fall into apathy, to not let the waswasas, the whispers overtake me and transform me into Gollum. And we're all capable of becoming Gollum, Corey. Instead of saying, why me? What my wife and I decided to, and we were very lucky, because that question of why me, Corey, and this is for people who are listening, who, if you've had financial distress, marital distress, if your kids don't love you, if there's unfairness in the world, diseases, you ask God or the universe, why me? And what happens, Corey, when you ask that question? Do you ever get an answer?
Sometimes, but it's usually in mysterious ways.
No, but does God ever say, well, here, Corey, let me tell you?
I wish it worked that way.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work that way, right? And you could sit there and wait for the answer that never comes. And the people who I've seen have indulged in why me, it's quicksand. It's spiritual, mental, moral quicksand, because you never get the answer and you drown. And so instead of saying, why me, then, all right, we go, what is? This is the reality. What can I do? And so in these moments, I think first and foremost, you have to do everything in your power to imagine a better story. That, you know what? We're still alive. There's still time. It isn't over yet. The Pharaoh thought he was indestructible. The Pharaoh thought he would live forever. And then what happened, Corey? Pharaoh's like, oops, I figured I'm not Aquaman, right? Things change real quick. So first and foremost, you imagine a better story. If even it's a better day, you imagine, you know what, maybe tomorrow will be better. And then the second thing you do is you say, what can I do within my limited powers to get to that better story? And I know people are laughing at me right now who are cynical, but having interviewed psychologists and psychiatrists, having interviewed people who have studied the power of hope, they say that this is the path. It's not enough just to be optimistic. You have to imagine a pathway. You have to imagine a better story and then construct a pathway to getting there and then do what you can to get there. And so in context of the 30,000 foot big picture of where we're at right now, I mean, the poop is hitting the fan. Rising authoritarianism, climate change, lies. People could feel overwhelmed. And just let me finish my little sermon, if I will.
Please.
People can sit there and go, dude, I don't have a podcast. I don't write for the New York Times. I don't have access to CNN. I don't have access to politicians. I don't have access to donors. I'm just an average Joe, Jose, or Jane. I'm trying to get by. And now that I just saw there's a Millennium Falcon behind me, I was having a conversation with Ian Basson, who's
I
a
just
great
noticed
defender
that.
of
That's awesome.
democracy. Yeah, you should
Yeah.
have him on your show. He runs this nonprofit Protect Democracies. It's against anti-authoritarianism,
Oh, you
and he
just
said,
interviewed him earlier this week, right? Or you
"Oh, that's
shared the
great."
interview? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Ian Basson. I just interviewed him earlier this week, and he saw the Millennium Falcon behind me. He's like, "Listen, everyone, has a Jedi power, right?" And I said to him, I said, let me extend and run with this Star Wars analogy. If you watch Return of the Jedi, spoiler alert, you got Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Chewbacca. You got these skilled warriors. And then you got literally Luke Skywalker as a Jedi. But guess what? When you were growing up, Corey, I'm gonna assume just like me, we imagine ourselves as what? Luke Skywalker with a lightsaber or Han
Yeah.
Solo. The reality is, most of us folks, and this is not a diss, most of us are Ewoks. Most of us are just these simple, hairy creatures with sticks and stones trying to get by, right? Most of us are Andor, if you've seen the show, a bunch of people without like any power. But if you watch Return of the Jedi, if it wasn't for the Ewoks, Corey, the Empire would not fall. It was the Ewoks working with their ingenuity, their sticks and stones, their knowledge of the local terrain with the Jedi's to bring down the Empire. If you've seen the show Andor, great show. It's these average Jose's and Joes, these working class members of the Star Wars universe who band together as small acts of resistance and bring down the Empire. And I mention this because for those who are listening right now, they're like, what can I do? Everyone has a superpower. Compassion is a superpower. Empathy is a superpower. In your local community, in your church, in your mosque, in your home, you can be something different. You can be compassionate, decent, informed. And it's those small acts of resistance, Corey, that light up, not into a conflagration of a fire, but into an illumination. And this is what we've seen throughout history, even American history, of how we, the majority, can then use our superpowers little by little with time and create a better story. Sorry for
Yeah.
my sermon.
No, it's great. You made me remember when I was a kid and I was first coming up in the New York theater scene. One of my proclivities, one of the things that held me back was the idea that I just wasn't an ensemble player. If we were doing Glass Menagerie, I wanted to play Tom. If we were doing Hamlet, I wanted to play Hamlet. But there's a great role called Horatio.
Mm,
And I'm realizing that there's beauty in harmonizing. One of the things that I've learned in doing this program is, when we first started 4+ years ago, I was hoping just to get, 100 downloads on an episode. Um, and over time, we've built up a nice little following, a nice little audience. But what's really the most impactful, and I get chills just thinking about it, is one conversation with one person, not on here, but like at the local bar, at the local coffee shop, or after church one day, or wherever. Just one conversation with one person that maybe we're very, very far apart. Maybe this guy that I used to be friends with from high school, maybe we'll have another conversation down the road. And but it's just one. And listen, part of the reality is that I'll have 10 conversations and 9 of them will go nowhere. 9 of them I'll walk away completely frustrated. But one of them maybe will have 1 degree of influence on each other. Not to turn that person 180 degrees and to turn him into the next Danielle, your co-host, but just 1 degree of persuasion, like, hey, dude, a little bit of humanity, bring a
that's
little bit
right.
of humanity back. And I think if enough of us are doing that and really seeing each other's humanity, like David Brooks' book from last year, to know a person, to see a person, to really see each other, I think that's the groundswell that's required to work against the Trumpification of so many of our friends and neighbors.
Yeah, I think I agree, and it requires it's going to be a long walk, and it requires the rest of us to be constant gardeners on that long walk and planting a seed like step by step, one seed, one seed, one seed, one seed, one seed, one seed, and you're like, will this ever bloom? And then what am I doing? I'm a fool. And then it takes that time and that effort, and you realize, oh, later on as a result, oh, okay, people change their minds. I'll give you an example. Just look at American history. I'll use a personal example. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, California, and I remember when Ellen DeGeneres came out. I must have been in high school, And we were just like, and I live like 50 minutes away from San Francisco. I went to an all boys Jesuit Catholic high school, as you know. And at that time, I remember we used to just laugh. People said like gay marriage. We're like, that's gross. Men and men marrying? That's just, what? That'll never happen. And Ellen DeGeneres, for those who remember, it's so interesting, her career arc. Now she's canceled for being like an obnoxious 1% elitist, right? But back then she was literally canceled. Her career was like destroyed for 3 years
Yeah.
because she was outed and came out as a lesbian, right? And then I remember my own growth on this is it took several years, but story after story, more people coming out, realizing, oh, back in those days, folks, for those who are Gen Z and young, with the LGBTQ, especially gay men, you always assume that they were living in San Francisco. They were all part of like a deviant subculture, right? Remember that, Corey, right? They're all I was in theater too. And then later on you go, oh, like then you realize, oh yeah, the signs were there. My friend, like super gay.
Yeah.
Duh. Right. But then like it takes time and you get more aware. And then you look back and go, oh, I changed my perspective. It took
Right.
time. Right. With women should never be allowed to vote. That was the predominant prevailing view in this country, folks. It wasn't until the 20th century, until the 19th Amendment, that women, 51% of the population, were allowed to vote. So it is another thing I want to talk about heroes and stories, if I may, because you mentioned, Horatio. I mentioned the Ewoks. Everyone assumes, let's be honest, everyone is either the hero or the victim of their own story. No one's the villain. Even the villains think they're the good guys, right? Like the Nazis thought they were heroes restoring Germany to power. Al Qaeda thinks that they're like, overthrowing the Crusaders. No one thinks they're the bad guys. Everyone thinks they're the hero or the victim. And everyone imagines themselves to be Luke Skywalker or Romeo or Hamlet. But the reality is most of us are Horatios. Most of us are Mercutios. Most of us are Yorick,
Yeah.
the skull, right?
Alas, poor Yorick.
A last part. And I mentioned this because, and I don't know if you've thought about this at this stage in my life, middle-aged man, 44 years old, I most likely have less years ahead of me than behind me. And keeping up with that analogy of the long walk and planting the seeds, the reality might be, Corey, that our role in the story is not to be the hero who gets the applause at the end, but our job is to mentor the hero, nourish the hero,
Yeah.
help the hero. Our job could be to be like Obi-Wan, right? Like, and maybe like Moses. People forget Moses. Yes, he overthrew the Pharaoh. Moses never got to Jerusalem.
That's right. He never went across the
Yeah,
river.
even Muslims believe this.
Yeah.
Muslims believe, just like Christians and Jews, that he led the people. He got them on the way. He gave them the direction. He helped them get freedom. Yes, they wandered, but he's like, that's the path. And his entire dream was, oh, inshallah, one day I'll get to go to Jerusalem. But the story goes, at least in Islam, that he physically didn't make it, and there's certain different interpretations where his ruh, his spirit, as it was lifted, right, as he died, his spirit was able to see Jerusalem, even though he didn't make it. And so, if why I'm mentioning this, I'm just thinking about this in my life, right? Things that give me hope. I might not be able to make it. Danielle and I talk about this on Democracy-ish. We might not be able to make it to the other side and see a true flourishing democracy that finally, for the first time, includes the rest of us. But maybe our job, Corey, is to lay the seeds for our children.
Yeah. Yeah, to do the to do the sewing, that's required. All the work is required. You're such an interesting guy, Waj. You have the Jesuit education. You're a Muslim, but how you're describing your practice, your religious practice it's like the mindfulness version, of being a Muslim. So you're such an interesting guy. So with that in mind, I'm curious how you processed the results of the election, say that day as the results were coming in the immediate aftermath, maybe the week after, but and also now. How have you been processing that?
So on election night, I was wrong. I've been wrong 2 times. My batting average over the past 24 years since the war on terror, I've been very good. I've been on the right side of history, if I may. I'd easily be in the All-Star game, compared to a lot of our colleagues who are wrong and keep failing up. But I admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong in 2016. I remember I was covering the elections for Huffington Post. I believe I went to Maine and covered a Trump rally right after the whole grab him by the P Access Hollywood thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And we went there and we were there for like 9 hours. And I remember I just interviewed a whole bunch of folks. And at first, people were very, they saw you as the enemy, right? You remember that. It's the same
yeah, yeah,
enemy of the people. But I won them over pretty quickly because people hovered around me and they saw how I was engaging in people and like, good conversation, some dry humor. And they're like, oh. So I remember some people who were really hesitant, who said no to me, who said go away. 2, 3 hours later, they came and talked to me. And I remember the way, we kind of framed that segment was women for Trump, right? Why are you for Trump? So I asked him, like, why? And then I remember I came home that day, the next day, and I told my wife, I think this election is going to be a lot closer than people think, right?
yeah.
Because a whole bunch of white folks in Maine, they're like, who are you going to vote for? We'll see. We don't talk about it. And I saw like high income white voters, low income white voters, suburban white voters. They loved what he was selling. Okay. I still thought she would win. And I was in New York covering the election. I was at Javits Center, Corey. For those who don't know, Javits Center was where they were going to have the balloons stream down and the Democrats were going to, like, anoint Hillary Clinton, right? That's where they were going to have their party. And throughout the day, oh boy, Corey.
Yeah.
Like around 8 p.m., you saw people stream down and start drinking alcohol, right?
Oh man.
So I was there. And I remember I had to go back to Huffington Post studios in New York. And I was the elder in my 30s. And there were women crying, women in their 20s just crying. And I had to console them. And I remember that day I was shocked and surprised, but I still was slightly optimistic. I said, maybe the institutions will hold. Maybe the Republican Party will hold them. But I learned real quick within a month. I'm like, nope, it's not going to happen. And I remember I was invited on CNN as part of the massive panel on Inauguration Day. I wish they have a clip. I was one of the only people of the 15 people there who called it. And the reason why I called it is because Sean Spicer, if you remember, came out in the press conference, his first press conference. And you know what he talked about? Remember what he did?
Oh, the crowd size?
There you go. And I said, we've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
That is going to be the foreshadowing of the Trump presidency. This is not going to be normal. And I tried my best to warn. Now, fast forward to 2024. I was wrong again. I thought that enough Americans, Corey, would do the right thing. I thought that she would win by 1.5 percentage points. She lost by 1.5 percentage points. I thought she would win, maybe take 3 to 4 of the swing states, maybe 5.
Yeah.
Win by about 300 plus.
Well, after the Ann Seltzer poll came out, I thought it was going to be even more.
Yeah, but I thought I thought I didn't care about which ones. I thought it'd be very close, and I thought it would shift. And I'll tell you that election night, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't sleep because much like Inauguration Day of 2017, rather, you could just see what would happen. And look at the chaos, Corey. He's not even president yet. Look at the chaos.
Yeah.
I'll give you 3 examples. 4 examples. Number 1, there's a bipartisan spending deal. It's been negotiated with Democrats. Donald Trump had no problem. Elon Musk, the shadow president, tweets out threats, almost derails it. I'll give you a second example. This brewing civil war over H-1B visas and people of color, right, between Steve Bannon and Elon Musk. By the way, they ain't going to stop on that. That's a big one. Donald Trump goes again with Elon Musk. California wildfires. Just be decent. Nope, no decency. Number 4, Samuel Alito yesterday, Supreme Court Justice, breaking all protocols and calling Donald Trump, and now Donald Trump telling the Supreme Court, hey, halt the release of this utterly damning investigative report. And also, 5th, he isn't even president yet. Greenland, our ally, is now, for the love of God, leave us alone. Gulf of Mexico, it has to be called the Gulf of America. I'm going to punish Canada and Mexico with tariffs. Canada and Mexico are our allies, folks. Greenland, Mexico, Panama Canal, Canada, just chaos, Corey. So where I'm at right now is the following: America learns the hard way. We effed around. All of us are gonna find out. We're in the long walk. It's gonna be bad, folks. It's gonna, all those people who say it's gonna be fine are all my upper class wealthy friends. I'll be honest. The people are all telling me it'll be fine. Don't worry. The one consistent thread of all of them, Corey, all of them are privileged. I'm just being honest. Uh, America learns the hard way, Corey. This is a country that would rather engage in the most devastating, bloody civil war than give black people freedom. This is a country that would rather drain swimming pools that let black kids swim with white kids. This is a country that, regardless of what you think of Kamala Harris of the Democratic Party, you have a competent black Indian American woman, and America's like, we'll go with the guy who quotes Hitler and failed us during COVID.
Yeah.
We've always learned the hard way, Corey, and it's going to really hurt this country. I think people do not realize we're in for a big hurt. But what gives me hope, bringing it back full circle, is the man's never won the plurality of votes. Yeah. It's a very divided country. I think people are going to have buyer's remorse real quick. Forget a year. I think 6 months. And sometimes in America, I think this is what people are underestimating. This is a country that was founded on what? Revolution. This is a country where if you really take away people's freedoms, this country fights back.
Right.
And so where will this country lead? Every time there's been progress, this country has been chokeholded back. Every 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So are we going to regress, or are people going to move forward? I have to hope, Corey, that this is like Empire Strikes Back. We're not in the New Hope anymore. We're in Empire Strikes Back. And if I may continue with the Star Wars analogy, at the end of Empire Strikes Back, do you know how the rebellion was? Luke Skywalker freaking loses his hand. Han Solo is frozen carbonite, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's bad, but they didn't give up. So that's I'm a pragmatist. We're in Empire Strikes Back territory right now.
Yeah, no, I think I'm on the same page with you on a lot of levels. One is I don't think our democracy is going to completely go away, but it's going to take a step back. In particular, I've thought most about the 5 freedoms that are articulated in the First Amendment. Freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of redress of grievances, and the freedom of religion balanced by the Establishment Clause. And I think there are very concrete ways that those are going to be strained. And I have to confess that I said a couple months ago that it's going to be okay. But this was my context. My context is my family came from Ukraine and landed on Ellis Island in 1921 after my grandmother's baby brother died on the trip, after they left everything they had and could only carry bring what they could carry on their very bodies across Europe and to get that ship in Denmark. That's the context of it's going to be okay. It's not going to be perfectly fine. Just like my friends who tragically have lost their homes, have lost everything they had. So when I say to my buddy, who's just getting his family started, it's going to be okay, meaning we're going to be here. We're going to be here with you. It's not going to be the same. We're going through pain. There's going to be more pain to go through, but we're going to be here together with each other. Along those lines,
well, Corey, can I also say one more thing? I think that perspective is important because for many of us, especially children of immigrants, man, like someone said this, it stuck with me. A Palestinian friend said that a Syrian friend said this, like while smoking a cigarette. America's a young country. They're going through their we've been through this before. This is fine.
Awkward junior high school phase. Like,
they had a revolution before. It's just, this is gonna probably be their second revolution, right? For countries who have suffered, who've gone through dictatorships, despots, who suffer as we're speaking right now, they're like, America, this is nothing, right? So in a way, it doesn't downplay what's going to happen in this country. It's going to be terrible. But for many people, like in Ukraine right now, look, Ukrainians are literally fighting for their freedoms. Ukrainians are saying we will rather die than bend the knee to Putin, right? Look at Syria. Look what it's emerging from. A brutal civil war, 14 years where a dictator, Bashar al-Assad, presided over the deaths of his own people. Like over 500,000 people died, over half the country is displaced, the largest refugee crisis. Gaza, look what's happening right now. So compared to most people, even then, I like to be like, you know what? We're still better off. But the pain that most people feel, and especially my family in Pakistan, they look at us and they go, it's like that line from, you ever seen the movie Don't Look Up? It's a really nice line at the end where Leonardo DiCaprio as literally they're about to die, they said, wow, we really had everything, didn't we? And then literally the world blows up. That's what, my family in Pakistan of all people, they're taking pity on us. When Pakistanis are taking pity on you, because you know what they say? You did it to yourselves. Look at how
Oh
you
man.
destroyed yourselves,
Yeah.
right? Wow. You guys literally have it all and you just pooped in it. You pooped in your own milk. That's the pain. We could have
Well,
been so much better, Corey, and we chose this.
we should have known though. I mean, we should as a country have known. It takes a special kind of talent to bankrupt 6 casinos. Like you're the house, dude. You are the house and you figured out how to bankrupt it. You have the best bet in Vegas and AC combined and you brag not once, not twice, 6 times.
The
So
house always wins except when Trump runs it.
exactly. So we got what we got what we deserve. We got exactly the president that we deserve, but not all of us, I guess, because some of us are doing our best to remember the real values of this country, to remember what is important, what made this country truly great, and what can make this country or at least bend towards a sense of greatness, if you will. Um, I'm curious how how you're how you're dealing with it now. Just the chaos that we're describing. I don't want it to be all dire, right? How you're dealing with the chaos now, but also things that you're doing to move the ball forward. How you have certain platforms, but other things that you're doing to stay engaged.
So, the first and foremost, to answer the first question, I refuse to allow the rest of my life to be hijacked by the chaos, the verbal diarrhea, the racism, the hatred of MAGA and Donald Trump, right? I don't have his like alerts. I don't respond to every post like the dog from Up. I think for the rest of us who want a better country and a better future, you have to take care of yourself. You have to pace it out. It's a marathon. I kept saying long walk. I did not say sprint, right? And so find those moments of joy, find those moments of hope, find those moments of rest. American workers work more than European workers and Japanese workers. American workers leave more vacation days on the table than any other worker in industrialized countries. We literally work ourselves to death. So I did a piece during the holidays, like last 2 weeks, in defense of rest. And I feel like we have to take care of ourselves, take care of your mental health, your spiritual health, your financial health, especially with Republicans are going to F up the economy, folks. It's going to happen. Warning. So take care of your economy, your bills, your family, your spiritual health, right? And that will help you, I think, to have the right mindset, the right body that will have to sustain the pain that this country will go through, right? The last thing I want is martyrs. I don't want martyrs. I want people to live long, healthy, useful lives. You dying early does not help me, does not help the quote unquote resistance, right? You living long, healthy, joyful lives, actually, and the reason why I want to stress joyful is then it creates a model for your kids. Oh, look at my parents. They were happy. They were in a good marriage. They spent time with us. They worked out. And they also stood on the right side of history, right? As opposed to what we see in these scenarios is look at my frazzled alcoholic dad who fought the good fight, but had a heart attack and wasn't at home, you know, was working all the time. Hey, I'm gonna go make a lot of money at a Trump casino and lose everything. And this is how I'm trying to, because it's gonna be it's not gonna be in 2 years, it's not gonna be 4 years. I think it's gonna be several years. Because I do think people will turn on Trump sooner than later. I do think there will be buyer's remorse very quick. He cannot escape climate change. He cannot escape the radicalization that we've seen. Look, the Cybertruck suspect, Trumper,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
guy who tried to kill Trump, the failed assassination attempt, Trumper.
Yeah.
Like this is the civil war that's brewing right now. This fire can't be contained, Corey. The economy with the tariffs, Elon Musk said it. It's gonna hurt. Who? The workers, right? You see workers already saying, hey, wait a minute, he lied to us, right? The rich are going to get richer, poor are going to get poorer. The broligarchy now, like Elon Musk and David Sachs and Peter Thiel, are openly bragging, right? So it's going to get a lot worse. And so what I'm trying to do is, look, I have no delusions of grandeur. Who am I? I'm nobody. I have, small platforms. I write at my Substack. I have access to Guardian and New York Times and Washington Post. Well, I don't even want to write at the Washington Post anymore. I do the show Democracy-ish twice a week. Sometimes I come on MSNBC. And what I try to do is, as people promote lies, I try to promote truth sandwiches. And what is a truth sandwich?
Instead of a
Is
shit sandwich.
Yeah. So yeah, MAGA's literally promoting the I'll give you an example. Let's go full circle. DEI caused the fires. First, you say the fires, in part, are due to the environmental factors and climate change. That's a fact. Republicans are lying and talking about DEI. The reason why they're lying is to distract you and take away from the reality of climate change, and also to promote racial divisions. The truth, again, it could happen anywhere. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in Montana, North Carolina, California, in Florida. You're getting hurricanes, and other places getting tornadoes. So what you have to do instead is concentrate on climate change, on the environment, clean air, clean water, regulations, and not fall for the racism and the Civil War. That is a truth sandwich. So that's what I'm trying to do, is as American corporations and the billionaire class are bending the knee, they're all bending the knee, folks, right now, to preserve themselves. Zuckerberg, Bezos is giving $40 million for a Melania documentary produced by MAGA. What do you think that's going to be like? It's so shameful. So you do that, and history will know you as being complicit. Me and Corey will be the ones who history will hopefully remember as the people who spoke truth, the people who built up community, the people who refused to gaslight ourselves and Americans. And I do believe, Corey, this is a prediction. Let's see if it goes wrong. Sooner than later, those who speak the truth, those who speak on behalf of the majority, those who call out the lies, those who are against fascists of all stripes, I think we will get the majority sooner than later. I think Americans are looking for truth tellers. I really do.
Well, I think some of the folks that I stay in touch with who did end up pulling the lever for Trump this time around, there is a pridefulness there. There's a pride goeth before the fall, as you say. And I think there's a short memory because we're forgetting what happened in 2018 and 2020 and 2022. 2024, yes, he won the popular vote by a thin margin, but he won it
Very
nonetheless.
Or I think 1.4 percentage points, man. 1.4 percentage points. Again, speaking about calling out the bullshit sandwich, replacing with true sandwich, Trump is desperately trying, just like with his inauguration, to say he walloped, shellacking, historic win. Folks, it was not. It was one of the most narrow wins in American history. Yeah. Kamala Harris, a Black Indian American woman who had less than 2.5 months, ran a campaign. There was disinformation, lies. Elon Musk spent $250 million. They spent $140 million attacking trans people, and she barely lost, which makes it that much more painful.
Right. So I bring that up because part of the challenge is figuring out how to live among the majority, because it is a majority nonetheless, a small majority, but a majority nonetheless. I'm curious if you have friends or loved ones that did actually vote for Trump, and if so, if you've had conversations with them, not necessarily to get into a debate or something contentious, but just a more in-depth conversation to try to understand how they arrived at that decision.
It's been really interesting. It's been painful also to see some friends and family members who voted for Trump. I asked, shook my head, and what I've seen is the following. I'm Muslim, although it wasn't just Muslims and Arabs and Palestinians. A lot of people, they got radicalized over Gaza. And specifically, the breaking point, Corey, was the DNC, where there was an opportunity, a request from Democrats, from people, the uncommitted movement. The leaders were very principled. Agree with them, disagree with them. They're like, we are Democrats. We do not support Trump. What we are trying to do is pressure the Democratic Party to do something to end this disastrous war, and at the very least have a Palestinian American speaker, right? And there was a Georgia representative. She's a Democrat, elected official, Palestinian American woman who gave wrote a 3-minute speech. Got published in Mother Jones. And you read that speech, you go, this is great. Like literally, there's very little anyone could say anything wrong with this. And you saw at the DNC, the Goldberg-Polin family gave a beautiful. By the way, for those who don't know, is the mother and father of the Israeli hostage who was later killed. They were given 3 to 5 minutes, and you literally Palestinian activists, everyone was like, "That was a beautiful speech, like humanistic, decent." If you simply had a Palestinian American speaker side by side, Corey, look how powerful it would have been. And the fact that the DNC did not even put up a Palestinian American speaker and then did not go and address Palestinians and did not go to Dearborn, you know what a lot of people said?
They don't.
I'm done.
Care. Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
That was a breaking
Gaza
point.
was not, according to the data that we've seen, it was not a major factor, but it was a factor. Meaning,
Right.
I believe Kamala, if you break it down, had she gotten 110,000 votes of Trump, she would have won the Electoral College. If she would have just done that, Corey, she would have lost by 50,000 votes. So that was one. So many people were like, I'm done. So they left the top part blank. Another aspect of it, I don't know if you've seen this, Corey, but I've seen this a lot, is a growing disgust. I've never seen this type of rage for both parties. People are just sick and tired, and they think the establishment does not support them. And so they're like, I'm going to sit out. A lot of people just sat out, right? They were not enthused. They were not motivated. The hugging of Liz Cheney instead of young people, people of color, progressives, did not go over well. The other aspect that I saw that really is something that I've talked about a lot is disinformation. I saw a lot of my friends who lean Democrat, who know better, repeating right-wing talking points.
Yeah.
Like New Scum and DEI and all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really investigated that. I'm like, huh. And they said stuff like this. I don't like Charlie Kirk, but he said something interesting. I'm like, what? Candace Owens, she's wrong in a lot about stuff, but on Palestine. And so what you're witnessing is this bouillabaisse mixture of what was once considered right-wing fringe points, now, if you will, bleeding into the mainstream. And then we saw the data. YouTube, podcasts influenced a lot of first-time voters who came out and voted who? Predominantly? Donald Trump. And we've seen also the data now, people who had incorrect facts about the economy, inflation, crime, immigration. You know who they went for?
Donald Trump. Yeah.
People who had the correct facts, who lived on Earth 1 with you and me, they went for Kamala. Yeah. And I saw that play out also, Corey. And then the final thing I'll say is MAGA and Trump, they work in this type of historical amnesia where I don't know if you've seen it within your religious communities. I've been listening within my communities, and especially a lot. It won over. I've been warning Democrats. I'm in Virginia. I warned it ever since Youngkin did it. I've been warning them for 3 years. Republicans will weaponize the trans issue. Get on top of this. I saw so many people fall for it. That Democrats are going to make my son gay. Democrats are effeminate. And at least Republicans are men.
Yeah.
And otherwise intelligent people, Corey, fell for it. You add it all up, you get a 1.4% victory.
Yeah, no, it's true. I've heard not just in church, but in my small business community, folks saying things as if they happened that they merely feel.
There you go. There you go.
Relating stories about what their teacher said at school. And I'm here to tell you, I know a lot of teachers. I know what their restrictions are. It didn't happen. But
bro, I'm in Virginia. It didn't happen. This was ground zero. I have 3 kids in the Virginia public school system.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
It's not happening. But they feel it. So it's that reality. Or maybe it's they've already decided on a certain bias and they're looking for narratives to support that bias.
That as well.
I will push back on one thing you said. I will say that having Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney at the DNC, it communicated to guys like me that's a big enough tent even for guys like me. I thought AOC represented herself well, much better than, and I could identify and track with her thinking much more so than I could have even 4 years ago, let alone 6 or 8 years ago. But having Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, Olivia Troy, and other folks like that at the DNC, it told me this is a big tent that goes from Liz Cheney to AOC. So I will say that. But Also,
Can I give
yeah,
my one pushback to that?
sure.
I don't disagree with you when it comes to you need a big tent, but two things. It came to many progressive voters, which is the base of the Democratic Party, the bear hug, which is good. Bear hug
Yeah.
them, but don't kick your
Oh,
own
yeah.
base. That
Right.
was number one. And number two, it didn't help them win. It still didn't. I understand the strategy behind it. But guess what? Those Republican voters, they
They
went
didn't.
Trump.
Yeah, they didn't come out. They ended up going back home.
And all you needed was like 8%. And you didn't even get five.
Yeah, yeah. It's that Bannon line from 2020 just didn't take place. Maybe there was a requirement for a larger one because there was the loss. Well, do you do you account for what Mike Madrid has been talking about, the leakage of Latino voters in his case? That's what he specializes in. But a lot of folks from historically marginalized groups have leaked and ended up voting for Trump.
Yeah.
So what
Madrid's been on top of that. Um, so you spoke about Bannon 2020. Go back even earlier. Bannon said, and this always stuck with me, we'll win the majority of whites. We win just enough people of color. And then he didn't add the rest of the part about, cheating and
yeah,
gerrymandering in Supreme Court. And he said we could rule for the next 40 years. Um, and that's what they did. A very deliberate, cynical leaking, right? Donald Trump goes to Queens, UFC fighting,
yeah,
YouTube channels, the Nelk boys, the pranksters, right? Machismo, playing up, we're real men, playing up on the fears of trans communities, feminism, making wokeness be whatever you want it to make. Yeah, that's the thing what Republicans are really good at. DEI, CRT, wokeness. What does it mean? Whatever you want it to mean. The most radical thing you want, you know, courting religious communities. I think you and I agree with this, Corey. And it, I want to bash my head against the wall sometimes because Democrats still don't get it. America is a religious country, whether you like it or not. Okay, you might hate religion. I get it. Uh, a lot of people love religion. A lot of people, in some way, shape, or form, even if they're not the most pious, the most practicing, it's like they're omnivores, right? They kind of believe, right?
yeah.
So if you speak in that language, as Republicans do in the most hypocritical and cynical ways possible, guess what, Corey? You're
You,
appealing to them.
yeah, you're going to win that vote.
You know what? And I keep telling Democrats, you have just like perform, like be Jimmy Carter, very religious guy, but then he mixes that religiosity with humanity and compassion, wins over folks, right? Even Joe Biden, give him credit, Catholic, goes to church. It won over some folks, right?
Right.
So their inability to see how these cultural issues are very deliberately weaponized by Republicans, right? And especially if you look at Latino communities, Muslim communities, some Black communities, if you look at some of the religious communities, they won them over with the anti-trans, anti-feminism stuff. I've been warning about it for 3 or 4 years. So Mike's not wrong, right? Mike has been warning about this for a while, and I paid attention to him to a few other people. He goes, Latino men, just we'll look at Latino men. And you have, but this is where there's a pivot. If indeed it's about the price of my eggs, which I don't think it is, but suppose it is, you can win over enough people. I think there's going to be more buyer's remorse. I think, as I said, there's a lot of first-time voters who are not, politically savvy or politically, if you will, committed to the MAGA party, which I think is going to be hard for Trump, who came out as a result of Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan and UFC this time, right? There's a lot of people who were promised a better America. Well, those tariffs, Corey, we're going to find out real quick. And I think Democrats here have a great opening if they'll take it. You have the richest man on earth who has his fingers all over the cookie jar. You have
Yeah.
the richest man on earth who seems to be the shadow president. The richest man on earth is bringing along another billionaire, David Sachs, another billionaire, Vivek Ramaswamy, another billionaire, Peter Thiel. If I'm the Democrats, you know what I say, Corey? It's us, the 99%, versus them, the 1%. Look at Donald Trump and Republicans, the party of billionaires and elitists. They're taking all of your money and your resources. They're taking not just all the cookies, they're taking the cookie crumbs. That will be the winning message. Will Democrats do it? I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. So, okay, I promised to get you out of here as close to an hour as possible. So let me ask you a couple
Yeah, yeah.
wrap up questions. One is the TP&R question. I've asked you this before, but it's always good to revisit it. TP&R question: what do you think each of us can do to be able to share space with, have better conversations with, perhaps even nurture relationships with people across these differences? So that's people who have different backgrounds and beliefs than we do, get their news from different sources like you're talking about than we do. How can we do better at talking politics and religion without killing each other, or is it even possible?
It's not possible for everyone.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
that's an important point, actually.
yeah,
There's a line somewhere, right?
there's exactly. It's not possible for everyone. There's a line somewhere, and if someone doesn't see you as a human being,
Mm,
if your engagement results in you having to defend your literally your humanity, then walk away.
mm.
And it's okay to walk away with decency and compassion. Number one, if you have the ability to engage in these conversations, then remember at the end of the day, people are human beings. No one has horns on their head, and maybe you might win them over, maybe you might not. But your job should be, and this is what I try to do: just plant a seed, a waswasa, a whisper, right? That's no,
Yeah,
really. It's like Inception. Remember how Leonardo DiCaprio puts the top and spins it? Maybe your top will be the one that just lingers and bothers them. And then once Donald Trump and MAGA F up, which they will, they'll never give you credit for it. But that top will be, it'll be like the start of the thread in their head,
right.
the narrative thread that might change the pathway. And then also, what I'll say is, at the end of the day, the analogy that I give is, you can't save everyone. The caravan has to move forward. I don't think 30% of Americans are going to change in my lifetime. However, the doors of the caravan will remain open.
Yeah, I love it.
That,
I love it. I love it. Do you have any questions for me?
why'd you cut your hair?
I wanted to
I
pretend to be
like it though. I like
respectable.
it.
Yeah, yeah. It's still trying to figure out what to do without all the. Yeah, I wanted to pretend to be respectable. No, first of all, I couldn't take a shower in less than 20 minutes with all that damn hair. That was part of it. So it was just very practical. The other part of it was complete vanity, which is, I was losing some weight last year and I had a certain goal and I had about 5 pounds to go. I'm like, let me cut my hair. Let me see if I hit my goal. So there was some
And you got
silly,
your
but
2 point. No, but the question I have, well, I was really curious about that. I was like, oh, Corey looks different. You look good.
yeah, I still got it on my shelf though. I got the ponytail back
Oh,
there
nice.
just
You got
for
to earn it, man. You got to earn
posterity.
it.
Yeah.
But the second question I have is, what's your red line? Like, in when it comes to engagement, like, when do you say, you know what, it's better for me just to walk away and say peace, onto you your way, onto me mine.
I don't, I have to think about whether I can define when that is. It's more like pornography. I know it when I see it. So it
That's a little
happened.
too hardcore for me, bro.
Yeah, it happened a couple times last year because I have family in Israel, and a couple of friends or former friends. Actually, one I was able to circle back around with, and we were able to kind of dig into where we went off the rails, which I was happy about. But they're both Trump supporters, and they were explaining to me and hammering me that if I didn't support Trump, that I was a bad Jew and I was anti-Israel and I was, you
Wow.
know, so that there was a line somewhere, and they definitely crossed that line, especially because they were talking about stuff that they really didn't understand. So I gave them plenty of warnings, like, dude, you're out of your league right now. You don't know the chords that you're striking. So we need to stop talking about this. Um, I'm getting to that point with the guy that I mentioned earlier. I just didn't want to give up on this dude. I didn't want
Mm,
to unfriend him. But,
mm,
I think he's in he's in a little ecosystem. Renee DeRista talks about it as what does she call it? Jonathan Rausch calls epistemological bubbles.
mm.
Bespoke realities. That's Renee
Yeah.
DeRista's concept. He's in this bespoke reality where I don't think he realizes that his very oxygen is hatred and rage. He
Mm.
doesn't realize, like, I'm like, dude, take a beat, man. Like, there's literally smoke outside of my door. Can you just take a minute before you continue with your hate? There's plenty of time for your hatred and rage. There's plenty of time for that.
Yeah.
So
Wait till Saturday.
yeah, okay. I mean, wait till Shabbos. For God's sake, like,
Yeah.
then I'll be in shul or on Sunday when I'm in church or whatever. Like, just take a minute, man. Like, so I'm getting to that point with him there when I have to reckon with the reality that there is no possibility that either of us will get to a point where we say, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." Where we're no longer thinking about our relationship as transcendent over this one conversation, but everything is a contest, everything is a war, everything is contentious, and transactional in the worst way. When that is the reality, there's no reason for us to continue talking. If there's no possibility for either of us to come to a new epiphany, even a little 1% epiphany, there's no reason for us to continue talking. So again, I don't know exactly when that is, where that is. I'll have to think more about that though. That's a really good question. So before we go, how can we make sure we follow you? Find your awesome Substack, the podcast, maybe a book that might be coming out sometime soon.
So just wish me well. I've been trying to work on this book for like months, but I'm doing the prospectus, and hopefully I can write it, and hopefully I can sell it. Then I can come back and talk to you about it. I think it's going to be right up your alley. But I write for the lefthook.substack.com, the lefthook.substack.com. Me and Danielle Moody, we host the Democracy-ish show now twice a week, Monday and Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. If you Google Danielle Moody on YouTube, we hosted on her show. I appear on Mary Trump's Nerd Avengers on Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. It's on Mary Trump Media. I just wrote a piece today on The Guardian. I had no idea they published it. They didn't even tell me. But it published, it's as we are talking about DEI being blamed for the fires, which they're not, it's called In Defense of DEI. And why actually DEI helps American economy and American workers. And I actually co-wrote that with a DEI expert, and we break down literally by 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, why this is actually good for America, why diversity is good for American economies, corporations, and workers, and why precisely Donald Trump and Republicans are attacking it. And then, I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter and all these other places. I wrote a book. Read it if you want. It's pretty good. Go back to where you came from and other helpful recommendations on how to become American.
That's great. Well, we covered a lot. Is there anything important we haven't discussed you'd like to add?
No, man, it was a lot. I look forward to coming back and being a 4-time member. So let's see. I got to catch up with Roush and who was the other one? Madrid.
Yeah. Thank you. Open invitation, my man. It's really great visiting with you. We are overdue to do this in person. I will be in. So you live in Virginia now?
Yes, sir. Alexandria.
All right. I'm going to be in DC. I know in May because the Democracy Group has our first in-person get together.
Oh, great.
So I'm going to hit you up before I come out, and I'd love to buy you. Well, actually, maybe have you make me a chai or something like that.
Yeah, let's do that. I'll do it. No problem, man. Just let me know when you're here.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Waj. It's great to see you. And as always, if you dig what we're doing, remember to follow the show, write the review, and now you can watch these conversations on YouTube and support us on Patreon. It's youtube.com/@politicsandreligion or patreon.com/politicsandreligion. Check them all out. Subscribe, get some TPNR swag. Your support really does make a difference. So thank you for all of it. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.